here we are for episode number 110 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Tuesday, May 7th, 2024 at 4:02 p.m. on an absolutely gorgeous Tuesday. Gorgeous sunny day out, wow. I mean, it's truly a sight to behold. It's the perfect kind of weather when you're driving out there, you got the windows down, you're hearing the sights and the sounds. You're hearing the sights. That's not a good start to the show. You're hearing the sounds of the various cars, their engines roaring along, the different music playing from people's radios or podcasts or anything of the sort. You know, with weather like this, I'm always reminded of American Graffiti. That sort of just, going through the night, hearing the different songs from people's cars, hearing the different kinds of cars, what kind of sounds they're producing and all that. It's really joyous. It's sort of like we oftentimes find ourselves sort of encapsulated in our own world with what we want to hear and what, our own vehicles sound like, whether that be a car or a bike or a motorcycle or, a scooter or anything like that. So it's great to kind of expose yourself to these sort of new sounds and new environments. And it also gives us a lot of time to really kind of think about our own creative instincts, with this sort of weather. It's going to be very easy to kind of mingle around and be caught into social situations that you don't want to be in. If someone's inviting you to a barbecue or someone's inviting you to a party or a get-together, you got to really kind of make the choice of whether or not you really want to be in a situation like that, or if you want to work on your own craft or your own art, and there's no wrong answer either way to that. It's just all about utilizing your time wisely and making sure that you're not in a situation that you don't want to be in. It's very easy for people to, I can't even tell you the amount of times I hear somebody go like, "Oh man, I don't want to hang out with this person today, but I'm gonna." It's like, well, why are you doing it, man? It's like, I should. It's like, well, what the hell are you talking about? I'm not talking about it. It's like, oh, I should go to this funeral. I should go to this wedding. I should, there are certain obligations that ultimately we all have our own morals, whether or not we can or should get out of the situations. But situations like, oh, I don't want to hang out with this person, but they want to hang out, so I'm just going to hang out. It's like, well, brother, what do you want to do? Because now they're taking away your time, your life, when you could be doing anything you want to do. You could be working on your art, you could be watching a film, working on your writing, reading a book, anything of the sort, man. You really got to kind of be at the forefront of your own life, man, because, you're going to be talking about, oh, I can't have wasted all this time with, doing X, Y, and Z when I wanted to do A, B, and C. And it's like, my man, you have to be forthright. It doesn't mean you got to be a jerk about it, of course not. You just say, he's got to be upfront. You got to say, hey, I'm not interested in this. Thank you for, whatever it is, but I'm not going to roll that way. Yeah, that's all it is to it. It's a crazy thing to kind of put on appeal. People think you're crazy as all hell to kind of go your own path, go your own way, now, you find yourself in a situation, someone's like, hey, I'm stranded, I need a ride, and you have a car, it's one thing if you're just like, I'm going to choose not to. It's like, well, that's a completely different situation than not wanting to. If somebody's stranded out there, they don't have a ride, of course I'm going to be, I'm going to go out there and pick them up or God knows what, but that's completely kind of different context and situation, so to speak. But anyways, so today being Tuesday, May 7th, two new Coppola releases, Francis Coppola films, have been put out onto Blu-ray. One of which is one of his earlier works, one of my favorite of his works, which is The Rain People. What year is that? 71, I think? 69, I'm sorry. Wow, 1969. Featuring the late, great James Caan, as well as Shirley Knight, and Robert Duvall as well in the film. Really a terrific film, for sure, man. It's really interesting. I think this was the one that I was talking about where it's this and another film that came out around the same time that I always mix up whether or not I feel it's inspired by like the French New Wave kinds of films and all that. Of course, with the French New Wave, Jean-Luc Godard ended up going to American Zoetrope in the 80s and spending a lot of time there. And I don't remember what the other film was that I often get mixed up with, so I guess, well, it's not a big deal, whatever. But the other film that's out today, which I haven't seen yet, which I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out on to pick up, was One from the Heart. This features two different versions of the film, which is what Coppola's been doing lately with a lot of these releases. He's had the Apocalypse Now, well, now that has three versions of the film, and The Godfather, The Death of Michael Corleone, and Twixt, and now this. So I bring these up because I'm just about wrapping up the audiobook of what I mentioned before, The Path to Paradise, the Francis Ford Coppola story, written by Sam Watson, or Wasson, I'm sorry. No, there's no T in there. It's Wasson, which I've mentioned before on the show, but I just thought it was appropriate timing that when I'm kind of wrapping this up, that these films are both coming out. And actually, I ordered a copy of The Rain People, so that'll be in tomorrow. But One from the Hearts, I think, is back order right now, so I have to keep an eye on that to pick that up. But that, like I said before, that has two versions of the film: the original cut of the film, which had its own production kind of issues and all the sort, and the newer. I don't know if it's a re-edit or it's just a One from the Heart reprise. So we'll have to wait and see about that. But yeah, it's just a really great time picking up these Coppola films. There are, many of his works are getting these great releases. And actually, I just saw the other day at The Conversation. I don't know if it was from Second Sight or what, but that's getting a new 4K, so that'll definitely be upgraded when that release is available. Because I have the regular Blu-ray of that, but The Conversation is just a brilliant film and one of my favorite films. So I'd love to just kind of get a new upgrade on that and to get the strongest, the best kind of quality version of that, undoubtedly. But that'll be picked up in due time. I don't even think the Second Sight they put it out, but I saw some release like the other day that is being put out. So that is very cool, though. But speaking of recent 4Ks, or upcoming 4Ks, whatever, I did I did open up the Goodbye Uncle Tom 4K, which I talked about an episode or two ago. And so with that 4K, it comes with two different versions of the film, which is the regular 2 hour, like 5 minute version, I think, and then like a 2 hour 15 minute version. But either way, there's about a 13-minute difference, so to speak. The American version is Goodbye Uncle Tom, and the Italian version is Audio Zio Tom, or Audio Zio Tom. I think it's audio, because it's the same as Africa Audio, so I think it's Audio Zio Tom. And yeah, I had watched the Italian version, Audio Zio Tom, and because I didn't realize that both versions were in 4K, I thought it was just the American version. Because I don't think that the DVDs had both versions. Actually, it's funny, my copy of the DVDs in the corner of the room, so I'm going to go ahead and grab it. Over here, I'm right over here grabbing the DVD, have it in my hand, walk back to the desk, hopefully don't knock anything over. Yeah, so this is the DVD from, I don't know what year this is, but I think this is just the American version. Yes. Just listed 2 hours and 3 minutes. This is the complete 123-minute English version of Goodbye Uncle Tom, fully restored from the original vault negatives, loaded with incredible extras, now presented totally okay. I don't know when this DVD came out. This is the copyright for 2016, so possibly I'm not... Unless this was a re-release. I'm not exactly sure about that. But with Audio Zio Tom, that was my first time actually watching that cut of the film, and I'm watching the film, man. And it's been a while since I've seen Goodbye Uncle Tom, so I remember a lot of it, but I don't remember the specifics of the narrative. And when it was first starting out, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just not remembering any of this, because some of these sequences I don't even recognize. And then I looked up after the fact about the pretty different versions of both cuts of the film. And just how much they differ, with the American cut being far more violent and grisly, whereas the Audio Zio Tom version plays out something closer to like I guess you could say like a Mondo film, in terms of just the constant narration, the attempts at the political contextualizations, even though it doesn't totally commit to the Mondo bits, because there are a lot of times where, you just have general kind of editing with a traditional sort of theatrical film, or a traditional, not just theatrical, but something closer to just a standard feature, that obviously you can't get with a documentary. That's any time you watch a documentary and you see those cuts, you just know that there's no way they could have done anything about it. There's actually, there was that film, I think Noah Baumbach directed, to my knowledge, While We're Young, with Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts, which I actually remember liking quite a bit. But there was a subplot in that film about Adam Driver's character being a documentary filmmaker, and Ben Stiller, who's helping him out on like one of these things, and he sees that he's manipulating the footage and all that. Next film, it doesn't totally. I like the film a lot, but it doesn't. Not all the ideas work, but I like that idea of just we don't really see many films kind of tackling these sort of faux kind of documentary footage people do. And it's funny enough with this that I read somebody online, and I don't know what, this is just a random name online. I don't know anything about it. I was reading somebody's review of the, of one of the versions of the film, and they were talking about how they were saying that Cannibal Holocaust was like a direct kind of knocking of that film, and I don't know if they meant like that type of film or if that was something that Diodato had directly seen. Because I mean, I always thought with Cannibal Holocaust that it's far more criticism of the media and sort of the exploitive nature there of just making money off somebody else's suffering until the tables are turned. So I don't think that really kind of apply. I mean, I don't know how much general knowledge was known about the production of this film at the time. I mean, there's actually a great booklet on the inside of the 4K that I want to read that kind of goes into the production and the exploitive natures of, Haiti had I don't know who the dictator was at the time, but basically forcing a lot of people to be in this, and a lot of the people they're saying were like imbeciles or, however true any of that is, I'm not exactly sure. It's going from one ear to the other, so take that with a grain of salt. But, if you're looking at it from that way, perhaps, but it's also like, they're not really killing people in this, man. It's sort of just like, you can watch any kind of media, and like, if somebody dies, they can paint their own narrative around it. You can show a picture of them smiling or a picture of them frowning, and then be like, oh, this person was good, this person was bad. And I think that's what Cannibal Holocaust really kind of taps into, is sort of just the media manipulation and really kind of exploitation of certain groups of people for, I mean, God knows what. But that's another conversation there. But anyways, it was interesting watching Audio Zio Tom. And I'll talk about it more in depth when I actually rewatch the American cut. But it really came together well. I mean, this is a little over 2 hours, but I think, like I said, I think it's like 136 minutes, but it actually goes by at a pretty good pace. And then a lot of the structure of the film is different than the regular American cut, because this cuts a lot back and forth between present day and whenever it takes place. I apologize. Whereas in Goodbye Uncle Tom, it's primarily just back in time, because even you have that helicopter shot, which is kind of landing in the fields, which I think happens earlier in the American cut, but here it takes about like 15 minutes or so to actually get to all that stuff, because it starts off with like some footage of like Martin Luther King's like a memorial for Martin Luther King and all that, and it's all very interesting. But also the ending as well is a lot of the same. I at least a lot of the same footage. And a lot of the same moments, which is what I was kind of talking about before, about kind of abandoning the Mondo sort of format, what kind of when it feels like it. There was a film that recently came out that I remember I had kind of the same sort of issue with, where it started out as one format and then it kind of abandoned it at a certain point that felt very inconsistent, and I don't think was the strongest choice for something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'll talk about more in depth when I actually get around to watching the U.S. version of it, because I have every intention to. The only real disappointing thing I would say about this, about the audio Zio Tom version, is that there's no audio options, and normally I don't really look at the audio options that much, but in this particular case, there were a couple times where I think it was mainly the soundtrack that I don't think transferred over the best, and I think that's probably I don't know the specifics of how to even like master or remaster or something or anything like that, but I think because that's maybe locked into like the track, that there's only so much they can do with it. It's sort of like when you're watching an older film and they have like a cross dissolve or something, and you'll see like kind of a drop in quality for a second, and then it'll cut back to pretty good quality. So it might be something along those lines, but either way, I mean, it does look very good. I mean, watching this footage for the first time in this really kind of pristine sort of way, it's really kind of a testament to the work that Blue Underground are doing. And I only have a handful of their 4K, so I can't really say for sure. But because I know they've done like a lot of the Jess Franco stuff, and they have like Death Dream coming out and stuff. But either way, I mean, all the 4Ks I've seen by them have not been disappointing at all. They've been really kind of terrific releases, kind of worth your money, especially in a market like this where there's so much competition and there's so many different kind of companies and Blu-rays and 4Ks vying for your wallet, that for them to be doing such consistently quality work is really kind of phenomenal, to say the least. But moving on from there, yeah, there's been plenty of great stuff watched this past week or so. I often forget what films I've seen before I recorded the last time and which ones I haven't. So just bear with me on that. If I'm like, oh, next time I'll talk about this film, and then I never end up talking about it, it's sort of like, it kind of goes with the, you're talking about so many films, you're watching so many films that things just happen, and it's just how it is. And, it can only do so much. But I did also watch recently from Massacre Video the new Blu-ray they put out from 2001 of Orozco, the Embalmer, pretty notorious documentary, directed by, let me get this fella's name here, Kiyotaka Tsurisaki, perhaps. and it's often grouped into, I think, being like a not quite a shockumentary, but it's definitely kind of grouped into this sort of what's the word? Something. I mean, like a. I don't even know. I don't even know what kind of documentary this is, but I often hear it in the conversation with like the traces of death and these kind of films and all that, and it's really not that. I mean, I think if anything, this is closer to. I'm on the IMDb page right now, but I mean, closer maybe something just like the Killing of America, where it has real kind of violence and explicit footage in it, but it's not a film that's that's not it's not deriding from that. It's not the main kind of reason to watch a film. I mean, unless for maybe some people it is to watch if there's any of these films and kind of look for the shocking sort of grotesque sequences, then then there's plenty of that there. But this is a very fascinating documentary. This is one that's been known for a while. It's been somewhat available. Actually, funnily enough, I was back in October or September. I was at a convention, and somebody was selling a massacre video DVD of it, and I've been looking for this for a while just as a curiosity piece, and they were asking quite a bit of money for it, a bit more than I was willing to spend, and ultimately I had to kind of put it down, and they said, well, you're not going to find it for any cheaper, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I won't, and then 2 months later, the Blu-ray gets announced, so I guess I did find it for cheaper, but yeah, no, with the new Blu-ray as well, it has some new features on it, which is really fantastic, and the Blu-ray's in the other room, so I'm going to try to find the page right here, but I think it has a new interview with the director as well. Let me get the. Yeah, here we go. A new interview with the director, words of the director from 2011, and then it has exclusive still galleries, and then yeah, the just technical aspects of it. Subtitles. You know, Spanish audio. Everything like that. It's a really solid film overall. It's a film that's definitely not for the squeamish. There's a lot of autopsy footage. I mean, a lot of cutting people up and sewing them back up. Real kind of gnarly stuff. You basically follow this guy, Orozco or Fraulian as Orozco, who is working in. He's the only kind of embalmer in this area in Colombia. It's a very, very poor area. I mean, they find bodies in the street just laying there. You can tell the police force probably isn't really doing a whole lot to, kind of investigate these. There's, a lot of crime going on. People are probably getting messed up on drugs and stuff. And it really just kind of follow this guy in his day-to-day life, sort of, he takes these bodies in. And it's interesting because he's almost, I mean, he's pretty disrespectful with a lot of what he's saying, and he's saying that there's some pretty unkind things about, if these are your, family members or friends, you probably wouldn't be too happy. But it's interesting. It's an interesting kind of look into it because it's somebody trying to not even necessarily do good, but have sort of some sort of respect for these people in this area where people would just be scooped up off the side of the road and pushed off to the side of the road. You see a lot of stray dogs kind of walking around, and they're probably not getting fed and all that. It's a grim kind of look, but it's never dour. Interestingly enough, is that I think it's never dour, and it never kind of revels in the gruesomeness of it, and it's really only gruesome because you're watching people getting cut up and stuff, and there's a part early on with a baby that might be a bit much for some people. But really, if more so, it's Orozco himself who is more kind of leading into a lot of the grislier kind of aspects of it. I mean, even early on when he's picking up the baby and kind of dangling and all that, I think that might be kind of tough for some people to watch. But ultimately, you're going to know whether or not this is going to be your kind of film or not, because the film doesn't pull away. I mean, if you're into any kind of medical sort of documentaries or anything like that, I mean, don't be watching this as a how-to. I think if you don't, yeah, definitely don't watch this as a how-to, man. You ain't going to be getting a lot of instructions on this, but it is kind of interesting to see. Because I've seen many of these kind of documentaries of just either medical procedures or autopsy procedures and all that, and just seeing kind of different practices, different parts of the world. And then, interestingly enough, where it takes a turn in the third act, it kind of becomes something a little different. I would say maybe not even the third act, maybe the last 10-15 minutes or so, sort of where the film goes to. And I'm very interested to listen to the new interview with the director, as well as the interview from 2011, because this guy has also done. He also did the junk films. from 2008, which is also a documentary as well. And I think this actually got grouped in a box set with Orozco at some point fairly recently. There was that company, I don't know if it was gosh, I'm blanking on the name of them right now, but they were putting out, they had like collections of like, they had a couple collections of like some of these documentaries, or not even documentaries, but like some of these kind of like documentaries together, and but they were kind of expensive, and it was just not worth importing or anything like that. But I know that that was part of the collection there, was as junk food and or junk films, I should say. And actually, it may have even been a box set about this director Surisaki, because I think The Wasteland may have been in there as well. I'm really not sure, but he's a Japanese filmmaker, interestingly enough, doing a documentary on this Colombian sort of embalmer. But it's really solid stuff, man. I really like documentaries that are, what I said before is that stuff that you wouldn't normally watch, and that's why I find it so important to kind of expand your horizons. And I always talk about this, man. I mean, I'm an omnivore. I'm a meat eater, but I'll watch anything. If I have a vegan or a vegetarian acquaintance who recommends me stuff, I'll watch anything and anything, because I'm always trying to expand my viewpoint and expand sort of my background on certain topics and subjects. And even if I may not agree with the topic or subject or ideology or anything like that, I think that living in sort of a bubble and just only watching, or listening to something that you agree with wholeheartedly, you're not necessarily forming your own opinion. You're just kind of molding your opinion to theirs. So if they say something that's like, oh, well, I kind of agree with that, then over time you're like, oh, no, I definitely agree with that. You're not really kind of gaining your own perspective. You're really just kind of, like I said, like an echo chamber, just kind of hearing yourself sort of speak and listen. I don't think it's a very healthy way to kind of go about your life, but ultimately we have our own lives, and if that's what you want to do is just listen to what you want to listen to in terms of like, your own kind of ideologies or whatever like that, then that's completely your prerogative and no one can tell you otherwise. But documentaries like this, I really just find so fascinating, because different kind of worldviews and points in the world of just these really kind of gnarly situations, man, that normally be easy to kind of separate yourself from. You just turn off the TV and then you go about your business. But a film like this, you really kind of end up really kind of thinking more so about being in the situation, being in this bad part of the world, and being the only one to really do this. I don't remember if he was the only one, but he was definitely one of the only ones doing it. I mean, it's sort of like all the stuff got brought back to him, all the bodies and everything like that. So it's a really, really fascinating film for sure. If it's something that you think you're going to be able to watch, that I would say, and you come across the Blu-ray, it's definitely worth your time if you're looking for sort of a different kind of perspective on a lot of this sort of grislier sort of content. And actually, to tie it all together, interestingly enough, speaking of Coppola, I had recently, and by recently I mean a few days ago, had watched one of Sofia Coppola's films, which I hadn't seen previously, from 2006, which is Marie Antoinette. And the film itself, it didn't totally work for me. I enjoyed a large part of it, but it felt kind of what I have a bit of a problem with some of her other films, is it feels a little disjointed. But she's a filmmaker who, regardless of whether or not, I end up liking more of her films or less of her films, I'm always eager to see what new project she has. I think the only two films of hers that I've loved were The Virgin Suicides and Lost in Translation. The other films have been a mixed bag, for sure. Marie Antoinette, it was one that I was not the biggest fan of. I thought it was okay. Somewhere, I think I probably last saw in 2010, so pushing on 14 years now. Or maybe I saw it in 2011. I don't know. I saw it when it was brand new, and I remember thinking that was pretty good as well. I didn't see The Bling Ring, but I heard not so strong things about it. The Beguiled, I didn't think was very good. I thought it lost a lot of the subtleties of the original, and the idea of just this masculine figure being overwhelmed by this violent kind of a female sort of force. I thought a lot of those subtleties, especially with Clint Eastwood being cast in that role, is so perfect that I don't think the remake was able to do quite as well. But even on its own, I just didn't think it was a very compelling film. I didn't see On the Rocks. I think that was an Apple film, but I've been curious about that. And then Priscilla, which I actually did like. That's probably actually my favorite film of hers since Lost in Translation. I definitely enjoyed it more than Marie Antoinette and Somewhere. but Somewhere especially is due for a rewatch. But she's just a wonderful filmmaker as is. I really it's just a lot of her films feel almost maybe not quite observational, but you definitely feel like kind of a passerby in a lot of these people's lives. Her films are less reliant on the narrative more so than the characters themselves. That's what all of them feel like in a way. I mean, especially something like Somewhere, which is really just in the lives of this father and his daughter. The father played by Stephen Dorff, and the daughter played by Elle Fanning, who also, coincidentally enough, would go on to be in Twixt by Francis Ford Coppola the following year. And also, speaking of Francis Ford, saw that Megalopolis. It's not even really a trailer; it's more of just a brief clip that has been released. So that is definitely going to be watched at the earliest availability. I'm very, very curious about that. I do hope, my only real concern is I do hope that with the ballooning budget and the spectacle of it all, that it doesn't detract from the script and the screenplay. One of the recent films of Francis Ford's that I have touted many times on the show was this film Tetro from 2009, which I think is even now still a very underappreciated and especially underseen film. I think that I don't often hear that film talked about in the conversation of Coppola's strongest work, where I feel it is definitely worthy of that. Film stars Vincent Gallo and Alden Ehrenreich, two terrific actors in their own right who work off each other extremely well. I actually am hoping for a Criterion or a boutique release of it at some point. I think it's just a wonderful film, and his recent stuff, Twixt, I have not seen. Youth Without Youth from 2007, I've not seen, I guess in terms of his 21st century sort of stuff, but I think I've seen a decent amount of his primary sort of filmography. I've seen all of his early work. You're a Big Boy Now, and Fiddian's Rainbow, and The Rain People, which I mentioned earlier. I haven't seen the Roger Corman stuff. I haven't seen The Terror. I haven't seen Dementia 13. I've seen The Bellboy and The Playgirls. I have not seen Battle Beyond the Sun, which I guess is a re-edit. But his primary stuff is all been seen from the highs and the lows. I think he's just a wonderful filmmaker. And it's just really great kind of seeing the different evolutions of his filmography and seeing sort of the, especially listening to this book now by Sam Watson, sort of the difficulties and the sort of triumphs of somebody who has been through it all, who has sort of had everything going against him in terms of productions, in terms of his studio, getting financing for his films, kind of the highs and the lows, but ultimately still with us, giving us these, in my opinion, these great films, specifically of Tetro. But that'll be it for this episode. I'm going to wrap this up now. It's a beautiful day out. Whenever you're listening to this, make sure you get some sunshine out, get some vitamin D. It's a beautiful, beautiful time to be alive. Let's take full advantage of it. Let's not sit around and talk about our dreams. Let's actually go ahead and make them true. Thank you guys so much for listening.